Welcome back to From Pain to Gain. Got my brother here again, Jason
Hello.
Montoya. I got the same shirt on, so it's all out there. We recorded all this in one day.
Yeah.
So, Jason, we are going over blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Before I go into my summary, Jason, do you want to jump into yours?
Well, I'll just read the verse. So in the Christian Standard Bible, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. So right living with God and with others. So if you're persecuted for living rightfully with others and God, then the kingdom of God is yours. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of the skies. In the message, it's you are blessed when you are committed to God, when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. So that's an interesting layer. Just when we are, this is my experience. When we suffer, when we're Christians and we suffer, we are, my experience is I'm driven closer to God. I'm driven into His arms. I'm driven to for my relationship to grow and to flourish even more. And so, um, that's evidence that something's right. If we're becoming, I mean, sometimes they might be angry or upset at God, but if we're still talking with Him and hashing it out with Him, then we're working it out. But
Hmm.
if we're cutting Him off, then that's a different matter. So that's an interesting layer that the message adds. But go ahead and add your layer to it.
Yeah, man. So this is again from BibleStudyTools.com. We have the responsibility to support our brothers and sisters in Christ who suffer persecution. We should do this, however, with awareness that while evil men and impostors go from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived, there may be a day coming when we are the ones standing in need of prayer. For if you live a godly life, you will be persecuted. You can count on this. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when and how much. So, persecution, this makes me first and foremost think about all the brave brothers and sisters that were martyrs directly, the extreme
Mhm.
example, especially in the generations right after Jesus was sacrificed and resurrected. Because man, you just think about all the atrocious ways they were killed. Um, like hanging upside down, being stoned to death, being thrown off a cliff. Um, and it gives me some peace to know that they were protected. You hear about some of these guys that were literally talking as they were being pillaged. Um, like, they don't know what they do. So in my heart, I think about when you are being persecuted physically, like violently like that, there's probably a bunch of angels like making you immune to all the pain.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, when Stephen was stoned, he looked up to heaven and saw, I can't remember the exact vision, but he saw Christ in the cloud or something. And he was being stoned, and yet he's feeling this amazing
mhm.
positive experience. So there could certainly be a spiritual intervention that overtakes us in spite of the physical torment that we might experience.
Yeah. So blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. So, you may think about Trump in a perverse way being persecuted, but he's not being persecuted because of righteousness. He's being persecuted for his crimes.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of memes come out as if he's some sort of hero, like Jesus, or even comparing him to Jesus, very idolizing him. Um, so we could start with Trump this time. Um, I don't even know where to start.
I mean, I think the way to think about it is blessed are those who are persecuted because of their unrighteousness.
Hmm.
Um, Trump he plays the victim. He says he says they're coming after me. They're using the political and judicial system to persecute him. That he is
Hmm.
saying he has got a persecution complex. So he's abdicating responsibility and he's saying he's innocent. But the reality is he's a criminal who's convincing and lying to people that he's innocent. And so then they think that he's innocent because he tells them neither, and they believe him. And so then they see him as a victim as well. And then he actually creates a relational and emotional connection with them, an attachment that gets deeper and deeper the more and more he's persecuted. So he's essentially created a context where the more that he's prosecuted for his crimes and held accountable, the more of a victim he becomes, which then riles up, it invigorates, energizes his supporters, and creates this toxic downward spiral. And
Mhm.
so
You know,
I
uh,
can't think of something Trump. I mean, there are certain good things Trump has done where people have criticized him. Like maybe he's done some particular situation or said something. But for the most part, we're not referring to those specific instances.
yeah, I want to come back to if we could even find policy that had good long-term effects that he made. But um,
I
I
mean, he
want
did do the
to jump.
tax cut, which, benefited a lot of people in different ways, benefited us. So you could use that as one example as something, but that was a collaborative effort with the Republicans and Congress through Paul Ryan's leadership as well. And that was
Okay.
something he signed. Um, so yeah, I mean, not everything he says or does is necessarily good or bad. Just because he says or does something doesn't make it good or doesn't make it bad. What makes it good or bad is whether it's good or bad, and whether a majority of what he's saying is true or not. And I just watched this clip from this really heavily Trump area county that heavily voted for Trump in the last election, and they're asking these two old men like how are they going to vote this time, and one of them is like, if Trump's lips are moving, he's lying, right? If
Hmm.
he's talking, he's lying. So he's just, so much of his words are just constant lies, which is the opposite of righteousness.
Hmm.
I think on the flip side, what you see with Harris is she gets a lot of criticism. And I think some of it's justified, some of it's unfair, some of it kind of looks over Trump, like ignores Trump and then focuses on her in an unfair way. But what she does is she doesn't play the victim. She takes responsibility and she leans in. And so that she went on Fox News. She didn't play the victim of, oh, Fox News is da 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 da. Instead, she went on there and she said what she said. So that's an interesting shift, is even when we are persecuted unfairly, how do we react? Do we respond with taking up our cross and taking responsibility, or do we play the victim? And so I want someone that's gonna take responsibility, not abdicate it.
Hmm. I looked up the word persecute. It says subject someone to hostility or ill treatment, especially because of their ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation or political beliefs.
Yeah.
And the first thing that comes to mind is if he's truly this powerful billionaire that is ever wise, why would he even have to say he's being persecuted or make it seem like it? Like I'd like to think if I'm in a powerful position, I would elaborate upon how blessed I am and how I need to help effectively the lesser people, not go on bloating about how I am uh, being attacked. Like, how could I be attacked if I'm this all-powerful person, right? It's kind of showing his insecurities also.
Mhm. Yeah, it's actually really, it's insidious because Trump is robbing the legitimate victimhood of victims to make himself the victim. So I'll
Hmm.
use immigrants as an example. He's essentially villainizing the immigrant, which are the people that have the least amount of power in the situation. He has a lot of power. They have none, especially if they're illegal. So he's essentially making them the villain, and he's robbing their victim status. If you remove the there are some immigrants that are doing crimes, and if you remove them and you just look at the majority of them, which tend to commit crimes less than even citizens, he's leveraging his power to rob their victim status so he can be the victim and get more power. He's kind of like power robbing.
Yeah.
He's looting. He's looting.
Looting. He's like going to a Goodwill donation center and
Yeah,
saying,
then
"Let me steal everything here because
and then he's
of
going to the
ridiculous."
next street over and selling it.
Yeah. And to address the immigrant thing, they're also legal immigrants to address the latest ridiculous statements around the Haitian immigrants in Ohio.
Yeah, it's an unrighteous thing to that is not right living with your neighbor by lying about them.
Yeah.
And then inciting violence, which is what he did. He incited bomb threats and all kinds of threats against the people of these illegal immigrants in Ohio.
Yeah. And on the voting side, which is even more um, evil because now you're disenfranchising people from decision making. Um, he has systematically created positions of power inside states, inside election officials, the federal government, to essentially, if he doesn't get his way, to promote it like another Steele moment again. Um, so it's just disgusting. Like it's impossible for him to accept loss, accept
Mhm.
reality. We're lucky here in
Yeah, he
Georgia.
cannot cope with reality. That alone should be reason not to vote for him.
Yeah, we got lucky here in Georgia that what those crazy election officials tried to do was
Yeah,
thrown down by a judge.
changing laws at the last minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So when it comes to persecution for Kamala, I don't know how to even approach that. I guess she was persecuted for being, it
Well,
wasn't
here,
even persecution, but she was accused of not being black, even though,
here's what I would say. This is an interesting dynamic. So in the message, it says, "You are blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom." Okay, so that last part is interesting because um, in her campaign, she's actually kind of leaned into her Christian faith more, as more so than she did in the 2020 when she ran in 2020. Yeah, that was 2019, I guess, because it was the primaries. Um, so she's leaned into that a lot more. And so there's been things she's talked about on interviews, or she went to that church and had that conversation. And so I don't, maybe that's not anything, maybe it's not a good example, but it's just something I noticed. Um, I guess people could say that about Trump, all these church appearances he's made and whatnot, but
yeah. But if I had to try to think of it, how it's applied to Kamala in terms of persecution, I mean, I'm sure she's getting all sorts of weird racist type statements like
yeah,
Obama did too.
and female, misogynist type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So in that regard, she's being persecuted. There's
unfairly.
there's no Bible law against a female leader of a country. So there, it's just
I actually am surprised I haven't heard more kind of like that on that kind of criticism on that level. Maybe I'm not in those circles, but I was kind of expecting that, like, well, she's a woman, she can't lead our country.
hmm,
But I haven't really heard that a lot. So
yeah, it's a lot
yeah,
more direct about churches, but this is a different entity.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think she's taking it all in good stride. Like we mentioned in the previous episode, she's going into environments that are unnatural, like Fox News. She's being persecuted there um, to pursue in a majority of her policy as righteousness, I would say. Um, so I like her courage in that regard.
Yeah.
What other forms is she being persecuted? I guess, I mean, let's look at her opponent openly talking about her like she's trash. There's been some inappropriate, I think even sexual, like
Yeah.
imagery or statements that Trump has shared in his X.com profile. Like that is
Yeah,
not,
I mean, he's definitely, I mean, whether or not, I mean, part of this is like you're blessed when you're persecuted because of your righteousness. So I think she's refrained from that childish name calling that Trump engages in, and kind of all the line, kind of he just lies and lies and lies, and just he slanders. And so, I think with Harris is when she does talk about Trump or attacks him, she's speaking. I haven't seen any examples where she's just being outright slanderous like Trump is with her. So
yeah. I
so she's
don't
just definitely a lot
recall.
more restrained. But anyway, it does seem like, if she wins, if we look at this in retrospect and she wins, kind of her taking the high ground, um, will be part of the reason she wins, is that she rejects the violent, toxic hostility of Trump and chose a different way. And if she wins, then we'll look back and see that as a good thing and a good contrast.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
my
just
concern would be is
found,
that if she lost, then people would think, well, you have to be nasty to win against Trump, and it'll just maybe escalate it. So
yeah, I just found the tweet where he reposted from another user. The text read, "Funny how blowjobs impact both their careers differently,"
yeah,
uh,
so
referring
insinuation and
to,
slant of.
um, yeah. So he's reiterating the lie that Kamala has done that to improve her career with no basis.
Yeah.
So, I just got to pause here for a second. Do you think if you have a daughter, or if you plan to in the future have a daughter, if she read a man saying or reposting such vile commentary, just one of probably many, well, could you look her in the face and say, this person is right for our country? If you
We
have a
couldn't.
son,
Yeah, we could
yeah.
and this is why I think a lot of people know just how bad and wrong Trump is. And they know it in deep inside,
Mhm.
but they're scared, they're anxious, they're fearful, they're ideological, they're whatever. But if you wouldn't say, I want my daughter to marry Trump, then you can't vote for him for president. If you are, then something is really deeply broken inside of you.
Mhm.
And like only God can fix that. But something is deep, you've split, you have broken. You must reconcile that. And I think, that can result in a lot of different reasons, fear and contempt, that we would
Yeah,
go along with it. But yeah, I mean, there's no situation where you want Trump to marry your daughter, or you want Trump to be your daughter's boss, or you
and on the
want.
opposite side of that too, if you have a son,
Yeah.
you don't want to be looking at something like that with your son and laughing at it or thinking it's healthy
Mhm.
for a man to live up to.
Yeah, do you want your son to act like Trump?
Yeah,
And that's the test. Like, all you gotta do is ask that. And most people that support Trump will him and haw and say, yeah, you're right. But then they'll still vote for him.
yeah,
And that's why there's something deeply wrong with them in their heart. That corruption, that needs to be worked out and healed. Something in them is, and that's can be all of us in different times in different ways. So
yeah. I've been wrong many times. You've been wrong many times.
yeah.
I would say more than me, but
Of course, definitely.
I keep a running list here in my desk. But yeah, we're approaching being out of time here. So, Jason, you have any closing statements?
The Beatitudes are a way to test whether God is working in our lives or God is working in someone else's lives. Is someone moving closer to them or away from them? And as we look at our presidential candidates, are the presidential candidates becoming more like the Beatitudes or less like them? Are they becoming more Christ-like or less like him? And that's kind of a helpful question to remind ourselves what matters most, and also to reveal maybe we've 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 idolized somebody or something that we need to let go of.
Hmm. You may be wondering why we spend so much time um, on the Bible and his Jesus' words versus actual candidates in this series. And that's because this is all about God and what he would like us to do and glorifying him. The candidates are secondary, actually even tertiary, further down
Yeah.
the list.
And part of it is so people can understand it and then make their own judgments,
Yeah,
because they may see
exactly.
it differently or they may know things we don't that we are not aware of.
Yeah, bringing
Yeah.
that perspective that you may not have had because maybe you're in an echo chamber. Maybe all your friends are voting Kamala or voting Trump, and you may not even know what the Christian perspective is when you think about it at a deeper level. Maybe you came into this just thinking that we're all just going to be judgmental about every aspect of this, as a lot of Christians are, unfortunately. So we want to thank you for watching this series. Hope you watched all of it, gained a lot of perspective. We absolutely love you. No matter what anybody thinks or tries to skew about Christians, they may just be babies that don't understand. Love is the number one thing. And we want to express that to you. If there's any way we could support you on another episode from Pain to Gain, please let us know. And that's going to be it for today. Catch you in the next one.
Adios.